So welcome back again. Thank you, Mr. Arya, for a wonderful, keynote presentation, which highlighted a lot of future-looking statements, and I believe we will progress towards it. Today, as we speak, the industry is at an intersection of societal pressures stemming out of environmental challenges. We are looking at higher import crude oil bills, and at the same time higher import of a certain set of components, rapid technological advancements, and at the same time rising pressure of maintaining the cost of ownership for the customers. As such, I would rather see this as enablers for the industry's vision towards more sustainable future. And at this stage, I think I feel it's a reachable progression as we discuss with the experts around. As an industry, we have moved from taking incremental approaches towards emission challenges to leapfrogging those. We have actually seen more volatility in the last 5 years, unknown, and at the same time, we are moved from actually discussing and debating whether it will happen to where it will happen. And at the same time, we have been able to move from discussing mega trends and disruptions to actually riding those. Also, the government seems to be receptive, proactive. I see industries collaborating, and a simple search will lead you to a direction on where the commercial vehicle R&D and the spends are in the future. So at this stage, I'd like to step back a little bit from all this spin, and let us have some on-ground insights from the expert panelists that we have today. Very warm welcome to all of you. I'd like to open this panel discussion beginning with Ms. Anjali. So, Ms. Anjali, powertrain is both the problem and the solution for addressing the climate change challenges. While the world and the industry is looking at more towards cleaner and zero emission technologies, let us agree to a fact that a large amount of commercial vehicles as of today and going forward are likely to be diesel driven, right? So from your perspective, what are the advancements that are happening in the diesel technologies which are likely to happen through this, and where do you see so-called the end of diesel, as many of the conferences were discussing? So your thoughts, please, Mr.
Thank you. So on diesel, I want to say that we see a longish transition out, and maybe diesel still sustains. And the reason why I feel that is because there is enormous work that is happening in the diesel ICE space. Clearly, the trend that you talked about in your presentation, emissions are here to stay. Greenhouse gas, your CO2 emissions is again something that is here to stay. And then safety, reliability, durability is what is needed for commercial vehicle applications. Right, so diesel alternate is not as easy. As you can see, right, the adoption of these technologies has to be economical to the end user. The TCO needs to make sense. The fleet owner is needing the economics to work, right, which is where it becomes very interesting, and that's where diesel is a great solution. What is coming as future? I don't know if you could see the Cummins presentation or the video that was running earlier on. Is really state-of-the-art technology on the diesel side. It's modular. We are pushing high power density, smaller engines giving more power, more torque, lighter. Certainly, and then looking at smart controls, which make the entire powertrain a closed-loop system, where basis the terrain, we are able to take decisions for the powertrain through the engine control module to say what level of calibration needs to be introduced to get the maximum benefit, both on the emission side as well as on the fuel economy side. So that technology is already introduced with BS6. As you know, we moved to BS6 and then we are moving to tighter OBD controls, right? It's coming in 2023 where in-use compliance for the first time in the country will be put in place, where randomly, vehicles will be pulled out, they will be checked for emissions, and the emissions durability expectation is, not up to the warranty period alone. We're talking about 7 years, 700,000 kilometers of emissions useful life confirmation that is needed, and that's possible with the diesel ICE solution that are running today. As we move out in the future, fuel economy becomes very, very important, right? Because the CO2 emissions are important to control, which is where the next generation diesel technology is coming, where cylinder pressures are going up, the fuel injection equipment is more sophisticated, right? The closed looping continues, better sensor technologies, right, to get that runtime information is something that will continue. And then all of it resulting in better emissions, right, both NOx as well as particulate matter, right. So as you hit Euro 7 levels of emission with the CO2 emissions, right, it's really, really tough. And we have solutions running in the world to be able to achieve that. So all of that is something that is being worked out. And then transitioning for further emissions control, introduction of mild hybrids alongside diesel. It's a very interesting combination, right, where now you're capturing whatever is remaining in terms of emissions, as well as waste heat and bringing it back, right, to improve the overall efficiency. So mild hybrid and then moving on to deeper hybrid solutions alongside diesel is something that will transition to. Cylinder cutoff technologies will be introduced, right, on the diesel engines, and so there is a lot of landscape available, as you can see, that helps improve the diesel engine, which is currently at Euro 6 levels, further, which is where the competing technologies right have tougher sort of landscape to sort of come closer. Right? So it's a long tail.
I think so. These are comforting words for all those risk-averse users. We have been used to comfortably using ICE-driven vehicles, and if diesel is going to progress along the lines, if I understand engine downsizing, lightweighting, use of technologies, and potentially blending with different fuels is something going to extend the life of diesel-driven trucks or diesel-driven fuel mix for a longer period. Thank you. Until you mentioned safety, at this point I'd like to bring Mr. Arya. Why we speak about a lot of fuel technologies, connected vehicles, there's this movement subject about safety as a subject of concern and focus. Mr. Arya, having a global experience as Daimler, known for safety as a prime considerations. What do you think in Indian scenario, how do you think the safety aspects are likely to move forward for commercial vehicles?
Thank you, Shinal, and good morning, everyone. Once again, well, before I come to the question of safety, I just want to pick up something on the alternate fuels or decarbonization. Just adding to what Anjali also mentioned. I think the dichotomy today we are facing is people who are in diesel technology feel that it will last longer, and the people who are in electric, for example, feel that will come faster. I think that's the whole thing. And it reminded me of, we all must have taken out tomato ketchup from a bottle, right? And earlier it used to be a glass bottle. And how did we do that? We turned it upside down and tried to hit it. What happened? In the beginning it trickled, and then it suddenly came out. And I think this is exactly what is going to happen with decarbonization. As soon as some scale is reached and with all the policy push, it will come much faster than we all think about. I just thought I would mention that analogy for everyone to keep in mind. Coming to the safety aspect, I sincerely believe we have not done our due when it comes to safety. India has the highest number of accidents. We read about it and we simply forget. What is our responsibility to change that? And out of the accidents we have, trucks are the most involved there. Right? We have the highest ratio when it comes to the total number of accidents and fatalities too. And I think somewhere we are stuck in our past. India is the only country today which has a BS6 technology, so almost at par with the world's best. But we still have cow trucks on the road. We are talking about front collision warning system and automatic braking system with a cow truck. I think we have to fundamentally change our belief and the way we approach safety. We have to get rid of the perceptions which have been built over time that a wooden cabin is much cooler during summers and it's easy to repair. I think the life of a driver is equally important as anyone else. And I think this is the time when the industry should get its act together, make some conscious choices, and decide not to do certain things which we have been doing over the past years. I think money is not everything. What is more important is integrity, doing the right things, and not only what the law is asking us to do. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Arya. What I understand is largely a cultural challenge, more of a cultural challenge than it's more of a technology. Then, but it's going to take sea of a time to change a culture, right? Now, do you think that a regulatory push will actually drive this change? Because we have seen, unfortunately, delaying of some safety norms in the past. So, keeping that aspect in mind, just a follow-up question. Like regulatory push has changed the mission to a cleaner solutions. Likewise, what as an industry we could do in terms of pushing a cultural shift of the mindset to look not only at the ticket price, if I may say, and to look beyond that into the safety aspect of vehicles also. Now, unfortunately, as industry, we are also used to being regulatorily pushed rather than from initiative. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Arya?
Well, I think culture or the mindset change is the first thing we have to address. And it starts with creating awareness. Creating the right awareness on what is important and what is not. What is the right thing to do and what is not. And this is the first thing we have to act on. And we have all stakeholders of the industry here today. And this is where a concerted action is necessary. Today, most of the times, the technology push is happening by regulations. And we have to stop asking for postponement of that, but rather embrace it and in fact propose to the market what is actually needed to happen. I think that's the mindset change which we need.
Sure, thank you. Speaking about technology, Sapna, if you could, elaborate your thoughts on how can we use this technology to, create more safer products. I know you have been focusing on connected technologies. We have been used to, customers or image customers of today want information tips. So if I may call the ETA culture, right? That's here to stay. But having said that, if you would like to elaborate on the safety aspect using technology, is that something that we could do, rather than be pushed from regulation? Is that a proactive measure from technology perspective? Your thought?
Absolutely. So, thank you for your question. See, creating awareness amongst drivers on how to drive safer, that we think is the first step as an industry, as a technology driver that we can take. Giving them information. So today the problem is that drivers really don't know their routes where they are driving, what kind of scenarios, what kind of situations that they may come across. There is a lot of data which is available with the OEMs, there's a lot of data which is available with the fleet companies, with the technology providers, with the connected vehicle services solution providers. That data can be utilized quite efficiently in making the driver aware of what is he going to come across when he is driving, much in advance. So for example, accident prone areas. So that's an information which is quite available, and I think in the industry a lot of people are not aware of that. If people know where the accidents are going to happen or they can take place, what is the probability of accident in different areas, this can be this can make a huge difference in reducing the number of accidents which are taking place in the country today. So that's one aspect on the accident prone areas, which we as an organization are also trying to solve using multiple aspects, working with the government, working with the TCU data which is coming on the server, and also proactively collating that information from the users at large, from the fleet companies at large. So that's one aspect on the driver's safety, giving that information. Second is, there can be systems in these vehicles to help them follow lanes. So lane adherence is another challenge that we see, especially on the highways when nobody is typically monitoring what turns you are taking. So lane adherence is another piece that can be addressed using technology within the vehicle. And of course, there are methods around forward collision. Those systems are there to help them. There are cameras, ADAS cameras that can help assess driver fatigue and can give them an alert. A lot of other kinds of alerts also can be provided. So, for example, things related to continuous driving. There is a level beyond which if the driver continues to drive, that will have an impact. And today, given the pressure of reaching the destination in a certain amount of time, organizations are not kind of working towards monitoring the continuous driving patterns. So that has also to be put in control. So there are technologies available both on the connected side, from the location perspective, giving them data points around sharp turns, sharp curves, blind turns, etc. That can be, that if deployed in a certain way, which takes care of least driving distraction also by a lot of information is being pushed into the driver. At the same time, in a very optimal way, if this information is provided, it can definitely help in reducing the number of accidents and improving the road safety and driver safety.
Right. Thanks, Sapna. I understand. Technology is not a challenge. It's there. But more importantly, awareness is a challenge in many aspects, unfortunately, because of the kind of composition that we have in terms of fleet operators. Having said that, you said they're already using, could you quickly elaborate on what percentage of these technologies are in place in India today? I know these technologies are there, but what is the adaptability? That gives us a sense of what's the gap that needs to be filled in terms of adoption. Because if you see from the regulatory perspective or from OEMs are ready, the technologies are ready, regulations policies may take their own sweet time. What do we do in the interim to enhance this adaptability? Do you have any thoughts or use cases that you think have been adopted already?
Yeah. See, unfortunately, people in this room who are talking on this matter, they are not the ones who drive these vehicles, right? There is a way, there has to be a way to communicate to the users of these vehicles, to those drivers, and the awareness has to be created at that level. I sort of feel that adoption of these technologies by drivers is still not happening. Technologies are there. There may not be enough awareness about these technologies. There has to be some standard operating procedures which have to be put in place in order to improve the adoption of this by the end users. That's where I feel there's a big gap, and that's where I think, be it I would say the transporters, the fleet management companies, the manufacturing companies, those are the entities that can play a big role, they have a big role to play in communicating this to the drivers.
Sure, at this point, you made a valid point. At this point, I'd like to bring in Mr. Malkin. Technology comes at a cost. Given the composition of the fleet operators that we have today, how difficult it is to create that awareness and the understanding of ROI of these kind of investments. You come from a background of operating fleets and as well as representing the industry. Some highlighted some of the challenges. So technology is available now, and likewise safety is also a very important aspect. So, with the rise of moving from BS4 to BS6, obviously we have advanced technologies, but at the same time the prices have increased. So, your thoughts on how do we really make this happen on ground?
Thank you. First of all, we were speaking about the road safety. There are 3 E's in the road safety: the education, engineering, and enforcement. Education is our duty to impart to the drivers how to drive the vehicle on the roads, for which driver training is imparted by us, by the corporates for whom we are doing the transportation. Even for the hazardous goods, there is an endorsement by the RTO whether he is eligible for the movement of the hazardous good reports. Secondly, Madam talked about the sharp turns, that is the engineering, that is the black spots, which is regularly being identified and get corrected. Then is she was talking about the lane discipline, which is the enforcement. Now you can see the enforcement is there. E-challans are coming if you are driving on a wrong lane. There are a lot of e-challans are coming to the transporters, and accordingly the corrective action is being taken. Now we are coming to the technology. See, as far as I feel, as a fleet owner, as a transporter, as an overall perspective of the industry, technology is being adopted. I personally have 500 vehicles, and all the vehicles are technology adopted. We got the regular alert, vehicle-wise, overspeeding, diversion of the route. Even the dhabas are being identified by corporates. If the vehicle is standing in a wrong dhaba, the alert will be there. Night driving is not allowed. 8 घंटे के बाद में भी गाड़ी चलती है तो वो भी अलाउड नहीं है. So these alerts are been regularly been coming to us. We have the system, we have the manpower which is monitoring. In my mobile the alerts are coming via emails, and we checks, we have one person deputed to take the corrective action with the drivers. This steps has been already taken as a fleet owners, but as collectively we all have the responsibility. Is there the conducive atmosphere for the drivers to drive on the roads? Definitely the answer will be no. They have the basic amenities. No. So these basic amenities should be provided. Conducive atmosphere. We have the conducive atmosphere here. We have the conducive atmosphere in our home. We have the conducive atmosphere in our office to do the work done, so the output should be more. But what are the road conditions you can see? Single basic amenity is not there. We are shelling out 40,000 crore in the way of the toll per annum. In the last decade, we have paid rupees 11.32 lakh crore as the road development cess. And what in return for the drivers we are getting, for us we are getting? Nothing. There are the bottlenecks. We are talking about the GST. We are talking about the good roads, golden quadrilateral. But is there a seamless journey? In spite of these GST, which was the most positive thing the industry was expecting, we were very optimistic and we were very hopeful. that all the bottlenecks will be removed. There is a seamless journey. We will be able to turn around time of a vehicle will increase. But in spite of the good roads, high-tech vehicles, the cost of the assets has gone double. जो गाड़ी 15 लाख की मिलती है 30 लाख की मिलती है, जो 25 लाख की 50 लाख की है। रोड शीशे जैसे है। सभी एमिनिटीज हैं हमारे पास। What is the turnaround time today? Average turnaround time. We are still making 280 to 300 kilometers per day. That's 8,000 to 900. In the developed nation, it is 900 per day. It is 800 kilometers to 900 kilometers. This is the difference. We are talking about the logistic cost. Sir has talked in the opening remark. It is for 14%, 16%. In the developed nation, it is less. It can happen here also. If a vehicle run in a day which is running 280 kilometers, I can run 600 kilometers. So definitely the logistic cost will come. Who will take this? How the checkpost will be removed? What is the need of the toll nakas now? What does the checkpost are needed? In GST, every consignment is monitored by the e-way bill. Every detail is there. Consignment detail is there. Parties, to whom it is going, which destination to which destination, how much kilometer is there. E-way bill generate नहीं होगा तो गाड़ी बाहर नहीं निकलेगी. उसमें आपके किलोमीटर है, आपकी इन्वेस्ट वैल्यू है. Then why every vehicle is stopped for checking? When the vehicle number is there, Vahan and Sarthi is there, handheld devices should be given to the inspectors. They can check or apply. Although on suspicious, there should be a random checking. And corruption जो भी बंद होगी, कितनी corruption है, कितना time बर्बाद होता है. तो I will speak about the toll also. We are paying 40,000 crore annually. Last decade we had paid rupees 11.32 lakh crore, which is a even statement given by the finance minister on the floor of the parliament. And 1,65,000 is the annual wastage due to the frequent stopover on the checkpost and the toll nakas. Why it is needed? When my vehicle is loaded, in e-way bill it is defined that vehicle is moving from Bombay to Surat, kilometer is defined. You cut down my toll there, which is 9 to 10 rupees per kilometer. Why it should be done? And from this, the loud message should be gone to the government. As a stakeholders, we are raising this issue on every platform where we print, electronic, and from your forum, the message should be gone. In New India, this is the need of the hour. All bottlenecks should be removed. There should be a seamless journey, and you can see how the GDP growth will be there and how the logistic cost will come down.
Thank you, Mr. Malkit. I think so. It was encouraging to see that the technology have been adopted. At the same time, you highlighted a couple of challenges that still exist in this logistics. Some of those need to be ironed out with the government. I'm sure as an industry representative, you'll make your bit. I think so. These are like e-way bill or GST are the way step forward. I think as we iron out, these things will be smoothing out going forward. Mr. Saju, you largely operate in the last mile space, accelerated by COVID, I think. So the e-commerce industry has lived decades of growth, turning it almost into a mega trend. And this growth has actually trickled down into this, larger demand for smaller and light commercial vehicles. How do you see, prospects or I may say technological advancements of targets in terms of sustainability targets? At the same time, the cost parameters can also be quite beneficial. Because if you look at the typical e-commerce operation, it's quite conducive to purification. It's got fixed points. It's got a fairly stable or predictable loop. The energy consumption can be predicted. Right? So you can actually form a good grid in which a mini fleet can operate. So it's a combination of all these things. So your sustainability targets, the fact that it is conducive for electrification, the fact that costs can come down, that's creating the shift. So you will see a paradigm shift in which in this case, especially last time, the 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers, will see a good demand.
growth along with the e-commerce growth, and also shift towards predominantly EV fleet.
Okay, thanks. You mentioned you see a sustainable growth going forward, for the last mile. Historically, you've been seeing almost 1:1 kind of ratio for heavy, medium heavy commercial. So we're still looking at 1:1.2 kind of a ratio for last mile. Globally, if I benchmark this around about 1:2 or 3 for every truck, medium heavy duty trucks over there, 2 or 3, light or small commercial vehicles. So do you see that changing? I still see the numbers still revolving around similar lines of 1.2, 1.5 kind of a ratio. So will this trigger that change, do you think?
So, again, as I said, it's an evolving space. So, it's too early to arrive at a ratio per se, because there are a lot of experimentation happening in terms of actually how do we increase the productivity of last mile delivery. Because for e-commerce companies, a combination of the load, the trip distance, and actually what's the cost per kilometer which is coming into play. So, as I said, the pilot projects which are running right now is focused on how do we increase productivity, how do we reduce the cost per kilometer on this space.
Okay. Kaushik, you have created a space for someone to really look at for used trucks in the online marketplace. This is an area where some it's at a very nascent stage in the used truck market. Do you see a trigger as we move from more complex technologies from BS4 to BS6, the cost of trucks rising? We see a similar trend in passenger cars, where used passenger cars are seeing more traction in terms of acceptance and growth also. So, how has been your experience of promoting a used truck platform?
Thank you, Jitan. So again, if I had to break it down further, first, if you look at the market size, we're looking at a fairly large market size. We don't really have exact estimates on what the size is, but probably you can assume that's going to be somewhere between half the size of the new truck market to about 1.2 the size of the new truck market. Because cars right now is trading at about 1.5 times the new car market. So the market is there. So the second thing that we look at is the challenges in the industry itself. So first of all, it's a disorganized industry. But as with many other things in India, there's organization within the disorganized industry. So you actually have an ecosystem that's actually thriving that doesn't allow this industry to get organized also, to a large extent. So you've got multiple intermediaries, you've got brokers, dealers, other intermediaries that are playing between the sellers and the buyers. You also have a lot of challenges in terms of trust, in terms of data availability. And another major issue that's also going on right now is the fact that you're not able to figure out what is the quality of the vehicle that you're going to buy if you're going to be a buyer. Another major difference between the used commercial vehicle market and the used car market is the fact that when it comes to used commercial vehicle market, typically what you find is in about 80% of the transactions, some kind of paperwork is probably expired, either the insurance or the permit or multiple issues, which causes a lot of challenges when you have to change the dual CC transfer or an MOC transfer. Now, considering all these issues, then the question comes, why now? What is actually different between now versus what happened before? So with the BS6 transition, a couple of things happened. One was we actually went from an electromechanical truck to a completely electronic truck. So there's a segment of operators right now who would rather transition into a BS4 truck when they want to start operation or continue operations versus transitioning to a BS6 truck. So that's been a major impetus to this industry. The second thing that's also changed is the fact that when BS6 trucks actually came in, the prices of the trucks actually went up almost 25 to 35%. So as both these factors together have actually helped increase the rates of used trucks in the market. So you've got a thriving used truck market out there, and it is nascent for being organized at this particular point of time. And the reason why this timing is also important is with the advent of BS6, I think the amount of intelligence that's available in a truck and with the OEMs to actually bring in and organize it becomes a lot more relevant, because today with the information that's available, It's much more easier for OEMs also to come in and say,
Right.
this is the quality of the truck, this is how long it's going to run, and it's the right time for you to buy it, and this is the number of kilometers you can run with it along with the warranty. So in terms of players out there, the first level of players are always going to be the OEMs who all have exchange programs out there. Apartments has the BB exchange program, Tata has a Tata OK program, Eicher has Eicher Shop. Then you have multi-brand players like us who are actually coming in. And the way we look at us is we work both with fleet operators directly to support them, and we also want to work with OEMs to actually help accelerate this transition. And finally, you had to come down to what is going to be the impact of a strong used truck industry on the new vehicle market. I would estimate that there's an opportunity for about a 20 to 25% market acceleration if we are able to streamline this entire process and accelerate the change for truck operators to go in and exchange these assets through some kind of a program or the other.
Sure, I would agree of what you said, the acceleration, and I'd like to build upon some of the points that you made. But before we do that, I'd like to, have some thoughts from Rima. You work in a very niche space of cold storage operations where temperature is paramount as you deliver. How is this cold chain storage, industry evolving, specifically post-COVID era, when we all saw the need for carrying vaccinations and so on and so forth? We are seeing an influx of startups also, which are highly technologically driven and plugging the gaps within the industry. Such as if I may term, the legacy fleet owners, how are they really adapting to these changes?
Thanks, Vinay. So we are into cold chain pharma reefer trucks, and we primarily work with pharmaceuticals, and a part of it is confectionaries. And of course, post-COVID, we did carry vaccinations. We did some consignments for Sikkim. And I was listening to everyone and everyone was talking, and I have a combination of things that Mr. Vakil said, that technology is the amount of information which is given and how you utilize that is up to a transporter. Like she said, the transporters need to get educated. In turn, when transporters are educated, you can educate your drivers. How can you educate? You have to do trainings. OEMs really support you. They come down when the transition happened to BS6. They came down, they told what are the advantages. So people are now educated, there's more information driven and everything is going automated. Businesses can be planned better if you utilize your resources properly with the data which is received. So technology is the way forward. That is a new age. People have to accept. Companies like us have to invest. There is no looking back. Especially for internally, and I've divided into externally. Externally, clients are at peace. Especially if they are carrying medicines. Medicines are supposed to carry at a certain temperature, or even perishable goods, or ice cream, or they have to be carried at a certain temperature. And especially for medicines, there cannot be any variation in temperature. So we have temperature sensors. So I would just like to share an experience. When I joined my father's company 10 years back, and I was completely new because I'm not, my father and his partner are transporters. I'm not a transporter. I have worked with MNCs where technology was handled by people, and it was not from a transport organization. When I came, we only had GPS, which was expensive. For temperature monitoring, we used to use data loggers, which was again expensive. But we had to adapt because we were catering to a very niche market. Data logger used to be given by the end of the trip. Now, technology is completely changed. Everything. I can give, my client gets tracking, real-time tracking on where the vehicle is, what is the temperature inside the vehicle. At the same time, we have digital logs. There's validation done. So for refer, before you put it to use, when you buy a vehicle, you have to get a validation which tells you what are the cold spots. Those things. And we actually evolved and we learned.
Right.
So technology adaptation by legacy, I think it is the need of another. Synergizing, now, your turnaround time becomes much easier because you can plan what time and what you can estimate how much time the vehicle will take at a particular point. For OEMs it becomes better if there is a breakdown. Through GPS they can track. So externally, internally, also the driving pattern of a driver. For example, alerts are set. He gets alerts even if the temperature goes 1% here and there. So there is technology is a way forward. And for last mile, I think better planning is a way forward. Milk route can definitely work. Milk route is basically you plan the destination where you, so if you utilize your vehicle to the fullest capacity to a particular location, that's the way you plan.
So you're saying that in an era of home deliveries, moving from B2B to B2C is also, it requires a little more planning part, that cold chain logistics is that can be given as an end-to-end solution, right, from B2B to B2C. All right, thanks. Mr. Arya, Kaushik mentioned, there is an opportunity in the used truck market, and as we have seen, a lot of OEMs have also moved forward towards that direction. How do you see, addressing that opportunity in a collaborative fashion? Like a lot of the challenges that Kaushik talked about, trust is something that when an OEM expands into the used truck market, there's no trust. Now, what are the initiatives that are taken, to really push the used truck market for?
Well, I fully agree with Kaushik when he made those comments. I think this is where we are. In fact, if you reflect back, this is where passenger car industry was about 20 years ago. So we know what has to be done. I think it's just that we all have to get down to doing it. As an OEM, what we did when we launched our Benz Exchange 2 years ago, I will briefly touch upon that journey because that talks about what you asked. We said we have to start taking steps towards professionalizing this space. And we do two things there. If the customer is wanting to sell an old truck of any brand, we help him do that. We facilitate that transaction, and we offer him a new car price. And this has done really well. We started, and now about more than 10% of our sales come like that. Right? But we still do that with intermediaries. Right? So there is work to be done in order to facilitate what we just mentioned. The second aspect is the used car price. So what we started to do is we offer an annual maintenance contract on a used vehicle. We even offer an extended warranty. So up to 1 year of warranty to give the confidence and the trust to the customer that this truck will deliver what we are promising. And we do that after doing a proper check and inspection of the truck. We also refurbish where it is necessary. So I think these are some of the steps which we have to start doing. One thing which we have also recently done and we will do more is we are tying up with the providers in this space. For example, we have tied up with Shriram Automobile because they have the ecosystem where the buyers of used vehicles come. And again, in order to facilitate the direct exchange of vehicle. So I think these are some of the steps which we have done, and I'm happy to interact with you later to find out if something more we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Arya. Ms. Anjali, historically, engines or powertrain has been largely a captive-driven business for a lot many OEMs with so many multiple powertrains coming into the picture. How do you see this space evolving in terms of investments and adaptability in terms of alternate fuels like CNG, LNG? Are you having a multi-pronged strategy or you have a destination zero outlook?
I think it's both. The solution to destination zero is not one, as you presented as well, and Sarya also talked about. So essentially, segmentally, if you look at heavy commercial space, it's really important that reliability and durability are front and center of the technology that is being offered. You need the running as efficiency kicks in of 800 to 1000 kilometers a day. no disruption, no charging required in between, right, no filling of fuel in between, right, so that this efficiency sort of kick in. So how we've thought about it, therefore, is to look at a fuel agnostic platform, like because the investments are so much, right? Whether it's LNG, CNG will fall short in the heavy space. As you look at medium CNG, becomes an alternate, but for long haul, we are looking at LNG solutions. So we have a base diesel carcass, and then we want to make incremental changes to sort of bring alternate fuel, whether it's LNG and then also hydrogen eventually. Hydrogen, I feel, has a lot of potential to serve this segment, just because the fuel can give the range, the power that is needed, and has the capability of being diesel-like performance, giving you the torque that is needed to carry the 55-ton goods from one destination to 800 kilometers to the other destination, right? So again, this fuel agnostic modular platforms that we're working on is helping us sort of work through the investments, and eventually, as the overall economics comes together, we get into the fuel cell electric vehicle. But then it's got some time. Because initially today it's 15x. X being the cost of diesel today, it's 15 times that, right? So it's just hard to see adoption. I can see in the intermediate term, hydrogen internal combustion engines becoming very easy route to sort of shift gears because the ecosystem's already ready. We have the players who can manufacture component technologies. We know how to build internal combustion engines, right? So just can manage hydrogen in the engine, then it's if it's green hydrogen, you're almost getting to zero emissions.
I believe if you come up with that, that may be disruptive in a way. And what is the timeline that you see for hydrogen?
Well, I don't want to disclose here, but we are actively working, and you will see something next year.
That's great. As we speak about fuel agnostic, future, Saju, you're already having a fuel agnostic, portfolio. You have petrol, you have diesel, CNG, and electric also. So, how has been your experience in terms of managing the investments as far as, having multiple fuel and the volume to value ratio? What is your thought?
So it's been quite challenging over the last few years, but that's the way to go because as in the fuel agnostic is the way to go because as you said rightly in your presentation for the next 10 years, a lot of these fuels will coexist and what will become the predominant fuel is something which we need to manage. But in the three-wheeler segment it has been more predictable, let me put it this way, because if you look at our space, we are already majorly into CNG. So if you see over the last few years, the shift to CNG has been pretty significant from a three-wheeler point of view, the last mile mobility. But the disruption is not from the investment point of view because we have invested in all the right things. So we have CNG, we have diesel, we have petrol, we have LPG, we have EV. So the investments are through. The difficult part is on the supply chain side. Because, for example, on CNG, what you've seen is a drastic shift over the last 2 years. So, from a market which was, say, 40% CNG and, say, 60% diesel, over the last 2 years, it has swung to an extent like we're currently having 60% CNG penetration, and diesel has come down significantly. So, you have the technology, you have the right rates, but the supply chain is not ramped up to deliver that sort of a swing over a period of 2 years. So that's where the challenge lies. The similar thing is happening on the EV space. So EV, you've suddenly seen a pickup in terms of demand, especially from e-commerce space. A lot of demand which is generated. There's visibility of demand. In fact, 2 years back, we were looking at visibility of demand, and that's one of the biggest constraints you have from EV space. It's when to invest. You know that it's going to come, but when do you actually invest and when do you get your supply chains ready? So in 2019, 2020, we were looking at a scenario of a slow increase as far as EVs is concerned, and suddenly in 2021, this thing was saying, okay, this is huge demand. Now we need to supply, but we're not able to supply. The supply chain is not there, so we are sitting on back orders for 6 months, so to say. So again, coming back to the point, the challenge will be on how to predict or how to forecast the supply or the demand rather than have the supply chain matching. That's where the key part will be.
Interesting. So it's more of a supply side challenge, and the demand has been faster than what we had envisaged. I'd like to pose this question to the panelists. We have been talking about encashing on scrappage policies and look forward for more circular economy. Beginning with Mr. Arya and then Mr. Malkin can really jump over it. At this stage we are already having a sizable amount of 15 plus years vehicles in service today. While the policy in place, I think so we are a little short of scrappage centers. At the same time, what is the view from the owner's perspective, from scrappage policy perspective, Mr. Malkin?
See, in regard to the scrappage policy, first of all, it's optional.
True.
It is not mandatory. If one operator opt for a scrapping, are we ready with the infrastructures? The answer would be no. What incentive do we get? The incentive, what we are saying, is very less. And the way the cost of the vehicle has gone up, it will be impossible for the small road transport operator, which is 85% of the current trucking population, to shift from scrapping his tractor and buying the new vehicle. And if he opt for moving his old vehicle, how much cost he has to bear, which is also on a very high side. What we feel as a road transport sector and apex body of the trucking industry, if the vehicle is fit to move as per the fitness, it should be allowed.
Okay.
ये तो वही बात है कि 60 प्लस की उम्र है तो आदमी को गोली मार देंगे। आदमी फिट है, ट्रैवल कर सकता है, तो why not? Retrofitment of the engine वो है।
So retrofitment is an important aspect.
गाड़ी में कोई फॉल्ट है, उसको आप ठीक करिए। गाड़ी स्क्रैप कर दीजिए, स्क्रैप करके आप 85% of the road population will be affected. आप देखिए what will be the cost in the country. लाइवलीहुड चले जाएंगे, रोजी रोटी चली जाएगी। जो एक गाड़ी का मालक है, 4 गाड़ी का मालक है, वो अपना परिवार उसके ऊपर पालता है, बच्चों को पढ़ाता है, उसका धंधा ही बंद कर दोगे। तो there should be a rethought on this. We should come out with the practical policy. Practical policies आनी चाहिए। This is our take, and practical है, this is logical, and everybody in the house will agree with me.
You bring an interesting perspective. The scrappage policy was essentially designed from getting more polluting vehicles out of service, and here you are proposing, retrofitment of engines, right? It's an interesting thought, and I'd like Mr. Arya, Kaushik and Mr. Raju also to add on to this. It's a tricky space we are in, right? For OEMs, you are looking at more investment demand sales. At the same time, from owner's perspective, it's of no value. So, how do you plug this gap?
Well, if we each look at individual perspectives, we will never make a progress, isn't it? And I think the point here is, do we as a country even know how to scrap things properly? Look at vehicles, look at anything else, we don't know. So we are actually starting from scratch. And now policy is actually helping you to make that step. And I hear a lot of discussion about, disappointment with the policy and when will the effect of scrappage policy come. I don't think we should rush into it. Till the time we are prepared, like he said, why should we rush into it? So let's prepare the fitness centers properly, let's prepare the scrap centers properly, let's prepare a robust IT infrastructure to handle the demonstration of the vehicle it has been scrapped. and then let's talk about scrapping. And once you scrap a vehicle, you have to take different materials out and make sure that they go back as inputs to the respective industry, isn't it? And that supply chain has to be established. So my own take is that we should all do this properly before we start this scrap.
Yeah, I completely understand. It's an ideal situation to have infrastructure in place. And would there have been a better approach in terms of segmented scrappage policy, say for heavy duty trucks where the emissions are the most? Maybe that segmented approach could have solved majority of the emission related perspective from the, yeah, I mean, you're right in a way that we are a long way to go in terms of infrastructure development.
On the emission side, you're right. We did this analysis. If you compare a BS4 or a BS3 or a BS6 truck, a BS3 truck, for example, produces 10 times the pollution of a BS6. Right. So, yes, doing BS6 will not reduce pollution. It will add less going forward. You will only reduce it if you take out the polluting trucks or vehicles off the road. But we also cannot do it at the cost of compromising on livelihoods. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to find a solution which can address that problem, but do it properly without causing a negative social impact.
Sure. Sure, please.
So, General, just a couple of things to add on here. So, we've been working with the government also on the scrappage policy. So, one of the things like Mr. Malkin Singh was talking about, they're grappling with establishing centers. Currently, there are only 2 scrappage centers available in India, both available around the Haryana, UP area. The second thing is the automated testing facilities that they want to implement. Now, the big challenge there is the conflict of interest between the automated testing centers and the RTOs, which are primarily the domain of the state government. So that needs to be reconciled. That being said, if you look at the age of vehicles and the application, so typically what we find is new trucks are used in applications where there's high running, you've got 10,000 kilometers, 12,000 kilometers a month, plus applications that are high intensity, for example, e-commerce, where you need to get from point to point very quickly. Then you come down to the next level of trucks, which are probably trucks that run between 4,000 and 6,000 kilometers. Probably the intensity is lesser, you probably have more wait times. There you actually deploy slightly older trucks. And then you come to the next tier that runs for about 2,000 to 4,000. And then you finally come to a segment that's less than 2,000 kilometers, which is where a lot of these really old trucks are currently running. Now, the scrappage policy, for the most part, addresses those trucks. But the testing facility and the FC, if it goes into these automated testing facilities, there's no real clarity around how that is going to be done, what needs to be done, because the government has been, the only thing the government has come out and said is the fact that if it's tested, it doesn't pass, you get one more opportunity to get it back, to get it passed. If it doesn't, it goes to scrap. And for newer trucks, for example, a 6-year-old truck, that seems really harsh, right? So unless there's a lot of clarity and working between the regulatory entities, the OEMs and the operators, I think this is not a problem that's going to be solved relatively easily. One other point I also wanted to add is we keep talking about CNG, these new generation opportunities like EV. We always forget the fact that we've just gone through a transition from BS4 to BS6, which has been a huge transition. All the OEMs, all the vendors, everybody's actually invested thousands of crores of rupees to make that transition. And today, a 45-ton tractor trailer actually emits less emissions than your cigarette smoke, a full cigarette for the same time period. So we've come a long way, and we actually forget about that when we talk about EV. So for the government to have a very effective EV policy, I think they also need to start focusing on renewable energy, which is something where the focus has gone over the last 2 years, where the investments have actually come down. So that will give you a much more cleaner ecosystem than continuing to depend on coal and then driving the EV policy.
I completely agree with what's being said here. I want to say that we have the most polluting cities in the world, right? And therefore, a positive scrappage policy game plan needs to be put. It's the need of the hour, right? And it's not that these models don't exist worldwide, right? So we know how to do it. It's about positively acting upon it, right? And I feel strongly about that. You see, we are trying to, I think, as Kaushik highlighted, we're trying to switch gears to newer technology, etc. And a BS1 truck is blind, BS2 truck is blind. It slows down the speed on the highway as well, right? Retrofit is an option, but let's go after that then, right? To say at least we get to BS3 levels of trucks, right? And not allow for age-old trucks plying or vehicles plying. And commercial vehicle is an important segment. We are big consumers of fuel. As you know, I think the largest consumers of diesel today. My only submission to this is we need an active and positive game plan to sort of improve the pollution levels in the country. Right? And it's really the need of the hour.
So yes, I think everyone is very much in agreement that environment is at the stage, and of course there are we may say this strategic policy and placeholder is a step forward. I think so that there needs to be more collaboration with the government or from industry also to see how retrofitment can be a reality. Unless we solve that in-service population. No amount of new vehicles which account only 5-7% of the service is going to change the drastic agenda of the environmental concerns that all of us have here. Before I open the floor for questions, I have one question for Sapna. It's not that connected technology is not there. It's been discussed for years now. Where do we see a system level and intermodal level? Intermodal level connected systems to truly have connected logistics. Currently we are at asset level.
अच्छा और ये कब करना है जब वहाँ पे होगा मेरा काम खत्म
So all of these focus around connected technologies is still at asset level. Where do we see a system level like warehouses and the trucks and that connected system coming in place, and that's where we truly have a connected logistics system. So it's currently a piecemeal to really encash on the technologies.
Absolutely. So, I'll talk about what we are doing to basically increase the pace at which this adoption at the system level of the technology, of the connected technology is being driven. So we are working with the government as well. So there is a unified logistics integrated platform which is being discussed, which is being put in place by the government. We are working with them to see and also to integrate various aspects. So like Sir was mentioning about why Sarthi is a separate system, Vahan is a separate system, why warehouse owners are not part of it, why producers, shippers, how we can get everybody on a similar platform where, so that holistically there is an efficiency that can be brought into the system. So there are efforts by the government, there are efforts by the industry, there are multiple organizations which are part of this, which are working towards making this happen. And I see that because of these efforts, I see that in a year or 2 years, we'll have this platform in place where we are all having an integrated approach there. In fact, we have also integrated the location technology to support this whole integration. So what happens is it's not just having the same information or the relevant information by all the stakeholders. It's also about planning. Once you have the information, you need to also plan your logistics, your supply chain in a more efficient way. And in order to do that planning, you need to understand, for example, integration of the GST vehicles into the system. That also is an important aspect here. So, like Sir was also mentioning that in the vehicle, you have the entire information about where the trip is going to start from, where the shipment is going to be delivered to. So source, destination, all these data points are there. Now, since you know where the sources are and the destinations are, the route planning the whole efficiency can be driven through a proper planning by
एक
using
वाजता
location
implement करायला
technology
या
where
2
you
वाजता तिथं
analyze
आमच्या इथं.
analyze the hotspots, the frequently traveled routes,
बघतोय.
where the interventions need to be put in by the government. So yes, I would say at a system level also this thing is happening, and we are working with the government also on that front.
Right, thank you. In the interest of time, I'd like to, open the floor for questions and thank the panelists for, a very insightful session. Probably they have elaborated on where we are, where we need to be, what are the existing challenges that are within our industry. But at the same time, I see more of collaborations and, working together will help us resolve many of these challenges in our industry and India as well. With this, I'd like to open up the floor for questions if any of them. Yeah, gentlemen here.
Good morning everyone, this is Ram Singh from Shiagar. My question is especially to Mr. Arya and Mr. Dilip about E20. So we are all aware that recently government celebrated that we achieved a certain economic landing ahead of time. As a trucker, I am worried actually because now they want to do 20% blending, right? And we have BS3 trucks and we have BS4 trucks and we have BS6 trucks. I'd like to know, as in OEM, as in the commercial vehicle manufacturer, is Daimler testing internally the E20 fuels on all these three types of engines, and what is the future going forward for the E20 blending as an OEM? And that's the same question also as an engine manufacturer, because again your engines are there in many vehicles, and again the same thing will also apply to you, whether you guys are testing it extensively to see do we need to make any changes in the engine's calibration, or do we have any impact on the fuel efficiency, and finally on the emissions for the E20. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for the question. I would say that we are working on E20. Right? We're getting ready to launch a mid-range truck with E20, and it's possible to do, right? But like you said, you just can't put the blended fuel in, BS3, and because there are changes that are needed, right, in the subsystems to be able to take a blended fuel, right? So those changes are being made, and a BS6 or an EPA, 27 levels of emissions can be achieved through E20. So the possibility exists. Diesel, B20 is what we're getting ready. Biodiesel 20, right? That's where we're getting ready. In fact,
बट मेरे को अभी
by
अचानक से
next
कॉल
year
आ
you
गई
should
मेरे को
see
1-1.5
the
घंटे के लिए
product
ऐसे
launch.
जाना पड़ने
Again, for biodiesel to be embraced
मेरे
across
को
the board is
एटलीस्ट 2 घंटे के
possible.
लिए कोई तो बंदा चाहिए उसका
It's
जो
a
भी
great
पेमेंट
way
रहेगा मैं दे
of
देता
actually, cutting down carbon emissions.
हाँ
But again, the entire technology needs to be ready. It needs to be tested properly, which is where you just can't put the fuel,
12
because
बजे
there will be long-term
12 बजे तक आ
durability
सकते हो
impacts
12
on the subsystems. So with the right sort of development of the
JW
product,
Marriott में सभा
these
हुआ
blends can be increased.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry to interrupt. We can take one or two questions more due to time crunch. So yes, the lady over there.
Hello, good morning everyone. Firstly, wonderful panel discussion here and a lot of insights on the industry. I'm Richa from Michelin India, which is Michelin Tires to be specific. So just a question, there's a lot of talk going on sustainability, and of course sustainability is the future, and on new technologies, on service, mobility as a service, and lot of tier ones are pioneers or making progress in these segments. They are trying to revamp their business models to cater to these kinds of services, including Michelin being a pioneer in all of these areas. My question here is directed to you, Mr. Arya. From an OEM perspective, I know you have very similar goals regarding sustainability, and we as a company have also launched the first 4-star rated energy tire in the industry. But as we both know, technology comes at a price. So at an actual practical level, when we are as an ecosystem, OEMs plus tier ones trying to implement these changes in the industry, there are challenges which are faced when it comes to that implementation and encouragement from OEMs to the tier ones, and acceptance of these changes with the price to the tier ones, to the OEMs. So these are the actual challenges which are getting faced. So I would like your comments on how OEMs are taking this and how Daimler especially is encouraging these kind of initiatives and actual accommodation of this in their vehicles from the tier ones.
Well, thank you for the question, and I think these are not new challenges. Whenever we try to bring a new technology, most of the time it comes at a price, and this challenge shows up. And I think that's where there is a much stronger need now to work together on that. We will all have to be prepared to do the convincing part, to do the demonstration part. Convincing starts from first yourself as a tier one manufacturer to that what's the price equation versus what's the value equation. Right? And if that makes sense, then we have to join hands and bring that to the customer. We also have to be prepared to invest in that, which means demonstrate to the customer. And once he or she has seen the actual benefits, I think the buying is much easier. This is what we have been doing since the time we entered this market. We came with trucks which were much better in total cost of ownership, but were more in price as compared to what was the price level in the market, even today. And this is what we do. We give our trucks to the customer, we help them run it for some period, and we actually then measure the benefit. And that does the convincing part. I think this is what we have to do more and more as we get into new technology space.
Thank you, Mr. Arya. In the interest of time, any further questions we could take through the day, and for your time and insights, thank you very much.